everyone and welcome back to class. You know that I am Halim, teacher and junior lecturer of Elizabeth High School and Junior College. So in today's class we are discussing about the 14th chapter, which is from the social second paper, and chapter name is National Movement in India, Partition and the Independence with the period of from 1939 to 1947. First we will discuss about the final phase of the national movement and try to understand that the situations that led to the partition of India here, and the people of the country faced the many difficult questions and had to accept the very difficult answers in these years. Exactly. So here, should the war be supported by Indians is questionable in the period of 1939 to 1942 here. So when the war started in the 1939, here most of the provinces of India were governed by the Congress ministries here, and here the British government had agreed to give the Indians the right to rule themselves to some extent. So here the British Parliament passed the Government of India Act in 1935. According to this, here the provision should hold the elections and winning the parties could from the government. So here the right to vote was given to small sections of the population, only about the 12% for the provisional assemblies and about the 1% for the central assemblies. And when elections were held in the assemblies of the 11 provision of the British India in 1937, here the Congress won in the most of the provisions. Here 8 out of 11 provisions had a Congress Prime Minister working under the supervision of the British governor here. So the World War was going on. Here the Congress leaders were now facing the difficult situations. Should they help the British in fighting war against Germany, Japan, Italian of the Axis forces is questionable to the Indian government, that is the Congress ministers. So here the British had decided that the India will participate in the war without even asking them. So here there were reasons both for and against supporting the war. So here the Congress was divided on this issue, and the most Congress leaders were opposed to the Hitler and Mussolini and the ideology of fascism. Exactly. So they wanted to fight against the fascists derived to the colonial or other the 7 nations. So here the Congress expected that the British would see their double standards in the expectations that India should support them in fighting the fascists, but not giving them the Indians full freedom. So here the British released this, but at the same time it was hard for them to accept that they will really have to dismantle the empire they had to build. So there were the difficult political parties in Britain at the same time of the war here. So Britain had all the parties governed and headed by the Prime Minister Winston Churchill of the Conservative Party here. So here the Conservatives wanted to maintain the empire for as long as possible. In comparison of the Conservatives, here the Labour Party was more willing to help the Indians to get their freedom. After this, now we will see about the who represents the people of the country here. Now that the Indian peoples were revolting against the British rule and they were upset, they looked for a ways to punish the Congress and make it weak and unpopular among the people. So here the British started the questioning the right of the Congress to the representatives and they represent the people of the country. Now they followed the divide and rule policy for more vigorously. To achieve this, here the British government support and encourage the plans of the Muslim League and gave the title importance to the Congress. So in this period, the Muslim League and its leaders like M.A. Jinnah become the more active in the mass politics. Now the formation of the Muslim League here. In this here, the Muslim League was formed in 1906 here. Till the 1930s, it mainly represents the interest of the Muslim landlords of UP and did not have the much more mass support. So it had demanded that the British should create the separate seats in all the councils, for which only Muslims would vote here. So it had argued that since the majority of the people in many areas were Muslims and Hindus also, so there were the more chances of Hindus getting the elected to the councils. So if this happened, Muslims would not be able to protect their interest in this government. So that's why here, if a certain number of seats were reserved for the Muslims, for which only the Muslims population of an area would vote, so these Muslims members would be able to raise their concerns and problems of the Muslims to the government. So here the Congress had accepted this logic and separate the electors were implemented from 1909. After all these and the formation of the Muslim League and the demands of the Muslim Leagues, now the Hindu Sabha and the RSS. Here during this period, the Hindu Sabha and the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, that is RSS, a national cultural organization, were mobilizing the Hindus here. So these organizations wishes to unite all the Hindus and overcome the division of caste here and to set to reform their social life. So they also gave out that the message that the India is the land of the Hindus who were in a majority. So here many congressmen were also impressed with the activities of these organizations. So here Congress tried very hard to create a secular understanding among its members, but it also tried a connect with the Muslims masses and make them feel secure and free. Messages and the activities of these organizations like the Muslim League and the Hindu Mahasabha and the RSS. So here Congress argued that the Hindu and the Muslims were not the people of two different nations here, but it is a part and the parcel of the Indian nation only. But here the British were eagerly listening to the fear of the League about the Hindu domination and the suggesting way to make them, and also they wanted to change the wrong impression that was being created in their minds by the Muslims secure. Get it here? Now after this we will see about the Pakistan resolution. So in Pakistan resolution, many people now felt that the separate governing arrangements were needed for the regions where the Muslims were in majority. For example, here the Urdu poet Muhammad Iqbal that had written the song Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara. So he spoke of a need to the northwest Indian Muslim state in his presidential address to the Muslim League in 1930. So here the name Pakistan or Pakistan from Punjab, Afghan, Kashmir, Sindh and Balochistan here. So all these are joined and was coined by the Punjabi Muslim student at the Cambridge at Chaudhry Rahmat Ali. So this young student wrote the pamphlets between the 1933 and 1935. He desired a separate national status for this new entity, but no one took the Rahmat Ali seriously in the 1930s, especially the League and the other Muslims leaders also, who dismissed this idea merely as a student's dream. So after this here the political situation in India changed when the British started following the policy of divide and rule. So here the Congress failed to address the fear of Muslims. On 23rd March in 1940, here the Muslim League moved to a resolution and demanded for a autonomy in the 1940 for the parts of the subcontinent where the Muslims were in majority. So this ambitious resolution never mentioned partition or Pakistan, but here in later years it becomes known as the Pakistan resolution. So people were thinking of different ways to solve these issues raised by the Muslim League here, and here the new nation state of Pakistan was one among these alternatives. But here the scenes and the discussions and the negotiations were not working out, but the idea of the separate nation state of Pakistan became very stronger. So here the Congress was unable to fulfill the demands of M.A. Jinnah, leader of Muslim League. So that's why here the partition done. Now after this we will see who will make the British quit India. By 1950 1941, here the Japan has started the expanding into the Southeast Asia. So this was the clear threat to the Indian territories as well. Exactly. So here the British wanted the Indian people to support in the war against the Japan. But here in March in 1942, here the Prime Minister, that is Churchill, was pursued to send one of his minister named as Sir Stafford Cripps here to India to try and make a compromise with the Gandhi and the Congress. But these talks failed after the Congress insists the Viceroy should first appoint an Indian as the defense member of this executive council. So here, after the failure of the Cripps mission, here the Mahatma Gandhi decided to launch his third major movement against the British rule, and this was the Quit India Campaign. So this Quit India movement campaign began in August in 1942. Here the Gandhi was sent to jail. Other younger activities organized the strikes and acts of the sabotage all over the country here. The young men and the women left their colleges, go to jail in a very large number. So here the socialist members of the Congress such as Jayaprakash Narayana were particularly active in this underground resistance movement in several districts such as Satara in west, Medinipur in the east, and the independent governments were declared. So here the British respond with a lot of force, yet it took them the more than a year to suppress this rebellion. So here the Communist Party of India decided to support the British war effort, and it was alarmed at the attack of the Soviet Union by the Nazis that it realized that the danger at a world level and called the war of people's war. So on the contrary, here the Gandhi felt that the Indians would be able to handle the Japan on their own after the British leave India. Now the Muslim League and Congress negotiation for the transfer of power here. When the political negotiation between the top leaders began again in 1945, here the British agreed to create an entirely Indian Central Executive Council here. So except for the Viceroy and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Force, they did this as a first step towards the full independence. So here the discussions about the transfer of power failed due to the Jinnah's demand that the League should have an absolute right to choose all the Muslim members of the Executive Council. So here this demand was not acceptable to the others. Most of the nationalist Muslims support the Congress party. Here the Union parties of Punjab, which had a large number of Muslim members, did not agree with the Muslim League demands. So in fact here Maulana Azad was the leader of the Congress party and delegation for these discussions as he was the president of this party. Get it here. After this, partition and migration. Now that a Muslim nation, that is Pakistan, was created, a painful and unimaginable situation arose from many people. So here most Hindus living on Pakistan's side of the border felt the insecure and the forced to leave their homes. So did many Muslims living on the other side of this border. Not all the people wanted this. All the people understood that why this was happening, so they felt anger and hatred against each other for being forced to move out of their homes, villages and cities. Exactly. That's why here the around 1.5 crores of the people, both Hindus and Muslims, were displaced here, and they killed and they looted and they burned each other. Between 2 to 5 lakh people, both Muslim and Hindus, were killed in this migration. But here some have become the refugees and lived in the relief camps and they traveled to the trains to find the shelters. Here Mahatma Gandhi moved among the riot hit peoples in camps and hospitals here. He was trying to spread the message of peace and brotherhood. This was not the freedom Swaraj. He had worked so hard to achieve this freedom. So here the father of the nation fasted, did not celebrate on the first Independence Day. And at the initiatives of Gandhi and Nehru, here the Congress now passed a resolution on the right of minorities here. Congress party had ever accepted the two-nation theory, but it was forced to accept the partition against its will. So it still believed that India is a land of many religions and many races and must remain so. Exactly. Whatever may be the situation in Pakistan, here the India would have a democratic secular state where all the citizens will enjoy full rights and are have a equal right to get the protection of the state and irrespective of the religion to which they belong. After all this, now we will see the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. First, see this picture of the great personality, that is Mahatma Gandhi. Here on 15th August in 1947, Mahatma Gandhi, father of the nation, was trying to bring the peace and the return in Bengal. He came to the capital Delhi only on 9th September in 1947. Here the old man was unhappy with a communal riots in the northwest India and tried to calm the fears and the anger of the people. But here some sections of the people were annoyed with the Gandhi for his rule in Indian politics. They disturbed his all religion prayer meetings many times. An unsuccessful attempt on his life was made 2 days before his actual assassination. It was on 28th January in 1948 that Gandhi said, "If I am to die by the bullet of a madman, I must do so smiling. There must be no anger with me. God must be in my heart and on my lips." These are the words of great man, that is Mahatma Gandhi. So here finally, less than the 6 months after the independence, on the evening of 30th January in 1948, Gandhi was shot with the 3 bullets while going on his all religion prayer meeting. So before dying, Gandhi said, "Hey Ram." So his assassin, that is Nathuram Godse, ran away from the scene of the crime and was later arrested in Mumbai. So he was once a member of Hindu Sabha party only, and because of his action, here the many people become against his organization, and consequently on the 14th February in 1948, All India Hindu Mahasabha decided to suspend its political work and concentrate on a real organizational work instead of him. Here a fanatic of the Godse had hurt his own friends and harmed his own mission also. So by this we have completed our chapter 14, that is national movement in India partition and independence, that is the period from 1939 to 1947. Thank you.